The year is 1961. The USA and the USSR had been locked in a fierce space race for 6 years, and the Soviets had the upper hand. They had sent the first satellite into space, the first animal to orbit the Earth, and even the first man-made object to reach the moon. They completely shocked the world, especially the Americans, in April when they sent the first man into space. Although the Americans sent their own man less than a month later, the Soviets will always have done it first. And so, in May, in an address to Congress, President John F. Kennedy expressed the nation's goal of putting a man on the moon and bringing him back safely, a feat which would put them far ahead in the space race and give them a huge advantage over the Soviets.
I believe that this nation should commit itself to achieving the goal, before this decade is out, of landing a man on the moon and returning him safely to the Earth.
NASA completed that goal in July of 1969 when they sent Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, and Michael Collins on the Apollo 11 missions to be the first people to walk on the moon. Whether or not the 6 Apollo missions that put 12 people on the moon actually took place has been a huge subject of debate for many decades. And even after 50 years since the first moonwalk, people are still arguing that the moon landings were faked. So the question is, did the United States actually fake the moon landings? No. And here's how we know that. One of the most well-known pieces of evidence that the moon landings were faked is the flag of the United States of America. Photos showing the USA flag on the moon flapping have been shared countless times as proof that the moon landings were faked, because how can a flag flap when there's no wind, when there's not even any air? The answer to that is simply, the flag is not flapping. It just looks like it's flapping. You see, NASA installed a horizontal rod at the top of the flagpole in order to hold the flag up, because they knew that there was no air on the moon. But the problem was, when the astronauts installed the flag on the moon, the horizontal rod got stuck. It wouldn't stretch out the entire way, and that caused the flag to look bent like that. So it's not flapping, it just looks bent. People also share footage from NASA of the moon landings showing the astronauts putting the flag into the moon ground. And in the footage, the flag appears to be flapping, but again, it's not flapping. Instead, the flag is swinging, because there is no air resistance on the moon like there is on Earth. Because of the air resistance on Earth, there's no way a flag could swing. But because there's no air resistance on the moon, the flag can easily swing, like a pendulum. And so when the astronauts move the flag around and adjust it into the ground, all that movement causes the flag to swing. You can see at the end of the footage, when the flag is finally fixed into place, that it's not moving at all, and it has the exact same shape that it does in the photos. People look at another part of the photos of the moon landing as evidence that the moon landings were faked, which is the starless sky. Take a look at this photo of Buzz Aldrin standing next to the American flag on the moon. You may have noticed that there are no stars in the sky, and that's weird, isn't it? On Earth, during night, if you look up at the sky, you can see stars. Sure, sometimes they will be dimmed out due to all the light, but they're still there, you can see them. So why can't you see them on the moon? Well, the reason why you can't see them on the moon is because of a very close star called the sun. The moon is an amazing reflector of sunlight. It reflects sunlight by a great amount. That's why the moon appears to be very bright in the sky. And all that light coming from the sun and being reflected off the moon causes the light coming from distant stars to appear very, very dim. The exposure of the cameras used in the moon landings were only long enough to capture the very bright light that is bouncing off the moon and bouncing off the astronauts and everything else on the moon. The exposure certainly wasn't long enough to capture the dim light coming from the stars. This is not only seen in photos from the moon landing, but it's seen in almost every photo that we've taken of objects in space. Photos of the Earth, photos of Mars, photos of other planets, photos of asteroids, and even photos of the moon taken by satellites. None of them have stars in the sky, and all for the same reason. Moving away from photos of the moon landing and to the Earth, another claim made by conspiracy theorists is that there is no way that astronauts would have been able to fly through the Van Allen belt. Van Allen belts are basically zones of radiation that surround the Earth that are caused by cosmic rays and solar winds that come from the sun and that are trapped by the Earth's magnetic field. There is a lot of radiation in the Van Allen belts, So much that if artificial space objects spend too much time in them, they can get destroyed. And if a person were to spend a lot of time in them, that person can easily die. So there's no way the Apollo missions took place because the astronauts would have been killed by the radiation. But the thing is, they really wouldn't have. The astronauts in each Apollo mission spent a very short amount of time in the Van Allen belts. They didn't stay there for a bit and then continue on to the moon, they just moved right through it. And NASA, of course being aware of the dangers of the Van Allen belts, shielded the space shuttle in order to protect it and to protect the astronauts inside. The astronauts did receive some radiation from the Van Allen belts, but the levels of radiation that they received were so low that they're considered to be safe levels. Let's stop debunking conspiracy theories and move on to evidence that we have that proves that the United States did go to the moon, starting off with what we brought back. The astronauts in the Apollo missions didn't just step on the moon, then head back. They brought back some samples with them, and they brought back a lot of samples. In total, 2,200 samples were brought back during the 6 Apollo missions. These samples included moon rocks, pebbles, dust, among others, and they all amounted to 380 kilograms, or approximately 840 pounds. And NASA didn't just store away these samples and hide them from the rest of the world, but instead small samples of a moon rock that was brought back during Apollo 17 were gifted to 135 countries. All of the samples were tested and experimented on, and all of those tests confirmed that the rock actually came from the moon. We didn't just take stuff from the moon, we also left a lot of stuff on there. Significantly, retroreflectors. Retroreflectors are basically devices that reflect light. If you were to shine a laser beam at it, the laser beam will bounce back right at you. On 3 of the Apollo missions, at 3 different locations, retroreflectors were installed on the moon. Astronomers on Earth are able to shine a laser beam at those retroreflectors, and the laser beam would bounce back right at them. This allowed astronomers to measure more accurately than ever the distance between the Earth and the moon. A good point to keep in mind is that the Apollo missions didn't just consist of the Apollo astronauts, Richard Nixon, and a couple of astronomers, but they consisted of over 400,000 NASA employees. And it's very highly unlikely that in 50 years, not one of those employees said that they faked the moon landing, or even leaked even a small bit of information that would imply that the moon landings were faked.